If you're actually interested in trying to get better at World of Tanks console, then today's video is hopefully going to be able to provide you some help, maybe teach you a couple things, and also tell you about how you can think about the game so that you can get better if you're finding yourself at a plateau. And albeit I am not the best player in the game, but I have played a lot of this game. We're sitting at a 61% win rate. So for those of you that maybe are below me in terms of win rate, then hopefully this one will actually showcase what you can do to increase your win rate as well as your average damage, and just in general be able to perform much better in all of the tanks that you're playing in, go for your 3 marks, etc. So I'm going to showcase a couple of gameplays in this video that we're going to critique and kind of explain certain things that happen in the game, how to minimize RNG and remove the kind of reliance on RNG on a lot of your shots, as well as talking about auto aiming and the aiming mechanics in the game. And also one of the most important things, which is positioning, and of course trying to showcase not only some amazing games in broken vehicles, but also showcase the games where maybe you're playing in not such a great vehicle that is really one of the weaker of its tier. So that vehicle to begin with is the Grille 15, which we'll find here by probably having to search. So if we go to tier 10 tank destroyers and select Germans, we'll find the Grille 15. So I recently played this vehicle. I wanted to see whether or not it is still usable and whether or not it is actually any good, because to all intents and purposes I do not particularly like the Grille 15. It has a lot of features that are just worse about it than pretty much all of the other tank destroyers in the game. So for example, number 1, it has high alpha damage, 750. Yep, okay, that's good, but it doesn't get any armor, so it has absolutely 0 armor. This tank will be penned in almost every regard unless someone hits just the gun or somewhere in that region, whereby, you know, it's not going to pen. You can't pen a gun on this game, you can only damage the module. So often, if you bounce off a Grille 15, it's either that you miss the armor entirely and hit the gun, or maybe you just miss the tank, or maybe you hit the tracks at a weird angle and you didn't even hit the armor behind it. So that's kind of one way that you can bounce off the Grille. It does happen, trust me, and maybe you get super unlucky and manage to somehow go through that tiny little hole on the top right of the turret as you're looking at it right here. So either way, the Grille 15, no armor, absolutely a HE fest, everyone will pen you. Yeah, not great in that regards. It's also a limited turret TD, so you can't look all the way around, which is different from all of the other German tank destroyers. The Borsig, the Waffle-Panzer IV, they are all vehicles that you can actually traverse the turret all the way around. So, yet another restriction to this vehicle. And then you combine the fact that it has 60 kilometers an hour top speed, which is good, and it can certainly reach that top speed. It's a nice thing to have. But when you then combine that with the fact that when you're moving in this vehicle, although it has the best accuracy pretty much in the entire game to all intents and purposes, 0.22 accuracy makes it one of the most accurate vehicles in the game, but it's not actually one of the most accurate vehicles in the game, because that's when you're fully stationary looking directly at an opponent and you wait for yourself to fully aim. The aim time on this tank, absolutely broken, 1.38 seconds. But that doesn't make the gun actually good, because what there is something in this game is dispersion when moving. Now, unfortunately, by the looks of it, Wargaming don't give it on the stats page. So this is something that people will not actually realize in the game. So if you're wondering, why is my tank seemingly accurate, but equally very inaccurate whenever I'm moving? Well, that's because tanks have a dispersion value associated with your vehicle, and the Grille 15's is absolutely garbage, to the point where if you move just even a tiny amount with the turret, you can end up with a horrific bloom on its shell. So you're going to be really inaccurate when you're moving in this vehicle, which make it worse than pretty much all of the other tank destroyers at this tier. So yeah, not great when you're in a tank that can't turn and you pretty much have to rely on being stationary to hit shots, even if though when you are stationary and you're looking down the scope, or at least in the sniper mode I should say, it is very accurate and you can pen people quite easily with the penetration of this tank. But yeah, then you look at other vehicles and you kind of think, well, the Grille 15, oh, there's a Turan in the game. Okay, it's pretty much the Grille 15, albeit doesn't have as good accuracy, but I mean, at this point in World of Tanks, with all the buffs and kind of attributes that you can assign to vehicles, equipment, 0.29, really not an issue. And it does an extra 200 damage. It goes an extra 3 kilometers an hour top speed faster. However, it is not as fast because of the fact that it's heavier, but not particularly that much heavier. It gets slightly better armor by the fact that it gets a rounded turret where people can bounce off, but it really doesn't have any armor because it's so thin, that armor. But it can cause some auto ricochets from low caliber guns, so lower tier vehicles. And of course, you still have the problem of basically being penned by everyone. But as you can see, the concealment of the Turan is pretty good. It's actually way better than the Grilles, and the Grille in this scenario has a camo net, whereas the Turan doesn't, and it still has worse camo than the Turan. But of course, you can see kind of the parallel as both vehicles in a similar sort of playstyle, but one is 200 damage less, doesn't get a fully traversable turret, doesn't have 950 alpha, doesn't go 63 kilometers an hour, and doesn't have absolutely horrendous bloom whilst on the move. Yeah, kind of makes the Grille 15 kind of pointless. But how can you make a tank that seems pointless, or that the game is going to be against you and work against you to actually have good results and often outperform a lot of the other players who might be playing in things like the Turan? How do you actually do that? Well, I think we'll jump into some gameplay now, because the whole intention of this video is to showcase how you can beat the RNG within the game, because there's enough people shouting about how RNG has screwed them and that's the reason why they are not performing in the game, when in reality 90% of the time it's because you don't understand the core mechanics or you don't understand certain aspects of the game. So hopefully this video, if you're watching it and you're finding it actually useful, then I'm glad, because you're at least accepting of the fact that, you know, sometimes it is user error, or maybe it is the fact that maybe you haven't spent an eternity playing the game like I have, which is pretty much 90% of the reason why I am able to do what I'm doing in this game. So let's jump into the gameplay now, and I'll kind of talk about these things more in depth and how you use them in the game, and we'll get onto other vehicles as well later on. So I thought it was important to give an overview of the tank and an overview of what this video is all about. It is for a purely trying to get better, or at least learning the game. I thought I could make a video where I just talk about the Grille 15, its strengths, its weaknesses, and review the tank, but I kind of feel like that sort of content is good for like just blatantly just looking at the vehicle in its particulars, but it doesn't really teach you a whole lot about actually how do you perform in a tank that isn't so good, or at least isn't the meta vehicles in the game, and how do people actually manage to have amazing games in tanks that aren't amazing? Well, yeah, it is possible, and this clip, at least this video, is hopefully going to delve into a couple of things that maybe you don't know, or maybe you don't implement into your own game as often as maybe you should. And certainly I don't optimize everything in every game that I play, which is why we lose 39% of my games currently, or at least overall on the account. I think we sit around a 64% win rate on average roughly during the game when I do actually play. But getting above that is really just, you have to be super elite, one of the best players in the game if you want to go up to 70% win rates, and often people will reset their account to be able to do it because it's based on their recent performance as opposed to their long-term performance. So just because you might have a low win rate, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are that sort of player, because, you know, you could have 300,000 games and, you know, been playing badly for 200,000 of them. So obviously that's going to lead to some skewing of what your overall is. So you should always be looking at kind of somewhat recent performances when you are looking at how you currently play and where to develop your own gameplay. Now, straight off the bat, we kind of went on to the castle side on the Kampenberg, and that's going to give us a couple of free shots into the open field if anyone moves up. We've also got good camo, so we can do that. We don't have to worry about anyone like that. Now, camo is one of those things that often people get very badly wrong. It's one of the reasons why you see people wondering, oh, there's invisible tanks in my game. Well, yes, that's because that's how camo works in World War II at least. Obviously, you can't see them here. When it comes to the game if they aren't detected, which is why you need to learn to master your camouflage and be able to understand when and where you'll get spotted, and also some of the ways that when you are spotted you can avoid shells. You can see me instantly pulling backwards from here. It's not to actually avoid the shot from the E100, albeit it will help us be able to do that, but it's actually to get out of the render range of a lot of their vehicles that are going to be on their hill. And by that, I mean the vehicles that are going to be camping in H8 and kind of G8 on their side of the hill, because they can spot you and they can shoot you. Well, not spot you, but they can shoot you when you're spotted. And that gives them an opportunity to get a free shot in. So if we can get outside of their render range where they can't actually physically see me, even though I'm spotted, we can avoid taking extra damage. And we've managed to do that pretty well so far. No damage taken. And often you'll see people stay where they are when they get spotted and not move, or at least not move in the direction they should. I always try and avoid damage entirely rather than trying to block it or run away or make it very hard for people to actually hit me. It should really be about how can I minimize either how many people are going to hit me or how many people are going to be able to spot me, or you know, how many opponents can I hit in one go. Well, in the Grille 15 it's one. I'm not going to be able to take out multiple tanks in a clip because I don't have a clip. So what do? Well, we move back to the Conqueror. This puts us in between a building between the E100. This allows us to go undetected from the E100, and we're going to go for the lower plate shot on the E100 there. He's crested the ridge way too high, and we managed to get one in there with the somewhat accurate gun when we are somewhat stationary in the Grille 15. But now it is time to move up a little bit within this game. We're up to 2.8k damage, which is pretty poor for a tier 10 tank destroyer. Really nothing special. But this is where the game kind of changes. Most people at this point in the game, having done a minimal amount of damage, or at least it's an okay game if you're wanting to, for an average player, I guess, or someone that's, generally somewhat an average player, so sitting around 50%, I expect 2.9k not bad. You're not going to be unhappy with that sort of result. But if you want to kind of progress and you want to get to the next level, you've got to be having games where you're looking at 6,000, 7,000 damage, and certainly if you're going for your marks of excellence, you do need those 6,000, 7,000 damage games. And so what you can see me doing here is just getting forward. We want to be somewhat able to spot people, and that's exactly what we do here. We wait until we're unspotted. Don't go poking when you're spotted. Don't go poking when you're not reloaded, because what's the point unless you're in a light tank and you have the remit to be able to move up very quickly and move back down without being hit. If someone's pre-aiming you, don't move up even if you're in a light tank, because they're most likely going to hit you and you're going to lose health. So don't do that if you don't need to. Now we get spotted here, no point sitting there. I'm not going to wait for someone to hit me and then they get spotted. I'm just going to pull back down. There's no point in me trying to do it. There's nothing to gain. No one's really going to help me if I do get hit, and we certainly don't want to get clipped out by a Waffle E100. Now we saw a I guess a tree fall down, which is where that Waffle is right now. We get hit twice. Yeah, there you go. This is why when you get greedy in the game, like we did there, you get punished really hard. We lost pretty much all of our health in one engagement, which, I mean, that's just Grille gameplay for you. But yeah, that's why you want to minimize the amount of time that you're out in the open, and just in general minimize how many times you do get spotted in the game. You can see me here, we pull back down again. I try and get a greedy shot into the E75, but understand that if I stay there just that little bit more, I'm probably going to get taken out. So now we know that all three vehicles on the enemy team are spotted. As you can see on the minimap, we can push up. Either, the Waffle is a one shot. If he pulls over, he's going to die. It doesn't matter. Maybe we die. But at this point, I want more damage. I want to get some extra bits of damage in this game. So what do? Well, we got to go to it. So we're going to make the risky play. It's not that risky, because if the Waffle does pull over, it's basically suicide for him for 157 damage. So probably not worth it for him. And it's unlikely he's going to do it. but we're going to go anyway, even if he does. And there you go, all 3 of them are spotted in the same circle, so that gives us an opportunity to just pull up on them. You can see here we're going to go for the Chieftain, and we wait just a second to get aimed and until he lines himself up nicely. And now we've got an E75 on full health, which is great because now we can use the camo factor of our vehicle to get some free shots. Here you go, one in there. And you can see we're low rolling. This happens all the time. Sometimes you're high roll, sometimes you're low roll. I think there's actually a distribution that most of your shots will be around the alpha damage of your vehicle. Some of them may go up above 25%. Some may go lower than 25%. But it's more common that you'll hit around the 750 damage mark, maybe 720, maybe 780. It's that sort of range, you know, and then of course the extremities are less often. I believe that's how it works in the game currently. So you can see there, from a game where we basically did nothing at the beginning of the game, we managed to pick up 7,000 damage, and this is something that you can do in your own games. Most people, if they get on such a low amount of damage halfway through or in the battle, they often do things that are very rash, or they try and kind of force it into coming into being. Whereas if you just play quite passively, do all of the right things and the basic things correct throughout your games, that is where you're going to become much better as a player. And of course you can still have brilliant results in tanks that most people probably would just disregard. The Grille 15, not a great tank, not a tank that I would recommend most people go towards as a first tank destroyer. Is it a tank you should get? Yeah, I think the tank is fun and interesting in some regards, but we've got another tank to look at and some more gameplay that I can critique and give my own opinion on what I do wrong and also what I do right, where I could have gone better. And this is one of the most important things, and probably the most important thing if you want to get better, is being very critical of yourself, not blaming your team. And I know this can be the case, you can lose purely because of your team, but could you have potentially made it a lot better for your team? Could you have potentially had a way better game if you played to a certain playstyle for the team that you were given? Can you alter the fact or the chances of winning with a team that isn't maybe as experienced and do some pretty stupid things? Yes, entirely. And that's how the top players do manage to get above a 50% win rate, because at the end of the day it should be a 50% win rate for everyone. It should be 50-50 whether you win the game if everyone's on the level playing field and has the same amount of experience. But if you've got more experience, it isn't a level playing field. You know what to do. But also, in order to get the experience, you have to know that you've had an experience to get the experience from, and a lot of people just disregard it, blame the team, or blame RNG that that's the reason they had a bad game, disregarding the 5, 6, 7 shots where they aimed poorly, or potentially had a look and maybe made a silly play at the end of the game or the middle of the game that ended up losing them 80% of their hit points, and then they blame the team for the fact that at the end of the battle maybe their team don't help them and they lose the rest of the 20%. It's often this sort of mentality that keeps players from being able to reach their potential, and hopefully from watching this video and my videos in general as we go through, you'll be able to understand that you can look at yourself and that is going to make you much better, because at the end of the day you cannot change your teammates unless you platoon up with people that are way better than you. Yeah, that is the only way you can secure having decent teammates, is by literally playing with them in a platoon. But at the end of the day, if you want to get better in particular, you have to focus on you and what you did wrong rather than everyone else, because at the end of the day maybe they're saying the exact same thing to you, and yeah, they probably are. And that's the case in point of most players in the game blaming other external factors rather than themselves, and pretty much is the same for every single video game out there, regardless of if you play World of Tanks. Often, you know, there's a reason why the vocal minority will be shouting about their teams, etc., but it's usually not the people that are playing the best in the game. Yeah, it's because they look at themselves individually and go, you know what, I actually lost us that game. I made a bad player, I didn't help out my team in a certain way, I maybe could have gone and helped my team in a specific different way, and yeah, hopefully you're seeing it in the gameplay. in the background. But we'll jump into at least a dedicated clip that I want to showcase that kind of gives you an idea and a game whereby we do the good and the bad and the ugly, and of course yeah, hopefully you enjoy that one as well. And so the first clip that we have, or at least the one that I want to showcase at this point in the video, is in the Conqueror. Now, you might have seen some of my videos recently on the Conqueror in particular as one of the best tier 9s to actually learn the game, get better and have good results regardless of what skill level you are. I think it's a very good opportunity for people to have really good games and perform really well, whether you're experienced or not experienced of World of Tanks. It's a great starter tank line, as well as a great line to actually play down when you're experienced as well. So definitely go towards the Super Conqueror, the Chieftain and the FE215B. It is a brilliant grind and the Conqueror is a fantastic vehicle to play. But the whole point that I'm showcasing this particular clip isn't because it's a good clip. This is actually a pretty terrible clip from myself. And so what better way, rather than kind of blaming everyone else and actually saying, well, I do everything correctly, because I don't. You just don't usually see them because they're not the games that I actually showcase on the channel in the majority of situations. So sometimes I will, because I feel like it's important to showcase the good and the bad of certain vehicles. And when maybe you don't play them correctly, they can be really punishing, which is true. But when I say about them in my reviews, it is based on all of the games that you're going to have in general, regardless of if I showcase them. Yeah, we'll try and maintain as unbiased an opinion as possible. So Conqueror, obviously hold down monster. If you want to watch some more good gameplay of the Conqueror, then I've got a couple of videos on my channel, and we recently did one the other day, so you can have a look at those if you're interested, in particularly the Conqueror and what you can do with this tank. But you can see here the Waffle Panzer IV. Now, I don't know what he's doing in this game, but he's pushing up towards us at the beginning of the game in the middle of the open field. He's been pumped twice by me, who got hold down. He's auto-aimed me on the move and penned, which was lucky from him, and then he's taken out of the game. So most likely only ever got one shot in that game. Now, I don't know, I didn't look at the post-game stats because I'm not that bothered about what other players do. We're just going to punish them when they make plays like that, and unfortunately we had to take a hit for it, which is a bit annoying. But obviously, Waffle Panzer IV, why would he go through the middle of the map? Now, I have no idea. But of course, when someone does that, you've got to take advantage of it by using your tank strengths, which is why we went hold down and essentially made it very difficult for him to do anything. And he was never really going to be able to do anything unless he just YOLO'd us anyway at that point. Because he'd gone into the open field, we'd have just poked using just our turret, and he couldn't get a shot into us, most likely doing 0 damage. That just was not the play for him to do. But what have I been doing in this game wrong? Because you've probably seen not too much, and you're probably thinking, what are the team doing over the right side? Well, what am I doing over the right side? Absolutely nothing. I've not realised that, you know, most of their team is going to be coming over from the right. I've been focused so hard on the YOLOing Waffle Panzer IV and these guys over there that I can't actually hit, that I've now allowed all of the tanks to come towards our base. Yeah, not a great play at all. Camping in one spot at the beginning of the game, it does happen. Maybe it works at the beginning, maybe you think that it's the play to begin with and that your team can support you, but you should really be thinking about the game as it develops there and then. So I realised this a bit too late, well, way too late, and the enemy team have now secured themselves in the cap circle. Typical cap circle gameplay, jumping straight in there, lovely, absolutely annoying that they've jumped in the cap, but it is what it is. We can only move forward as we see fit. So there's a 50 TP here, he's pushing over, trying to get a couple of shots. We've got T30 here who manages to actually pen us straight through the frontal turret of the Super Conqueror, or the Conqueror even, which is a weak point. The actual mantlet of the Conqueror with high enough penetration is a weak point, and if you watched the video you'd have seen that. But you can see we picked up 2.8k damage, but what could we have done here differently? How could we have changed this game? Well, there's not a lot that we can do in particular on our own against 5, 6, 7 tanks all in one, But what I should have done when I got spotted was actually go under the bridge over to the right and push towards the cap, because I've got good view range. I could have been able to actually spot the guys on the rest of the enemy team who might have been in the cap. We could have destroyed cover, we could have opened up the cap circle so that we could have been able to shoot whoever was in the cap, made it difficult. Then we would have probably won, because we had the tank advantage and pretty much was basically my fault, I would say, in that game. We definitely did not play to our utmost ability, and we should have done something differently to win that game. Yes, I make terrible plays, I know. It is one of those things that you probably don't see unless you watch me live, at which point most of the time it's pretty funny. But yeah, the live games are always fun to see your guys' opinion, and of course some of the games that you don't usually see. But in terms of how we could have done that differently, what I would have done is move back underneath the bridge, gone to the hill area and used our gun depression. We could have got hit by the Skoda T50 as he pulls over, but it's one of those things that we had to reset the cap, otherwise we're going to lose. If we did reset the cap or remove the person in the cap, we probably would have won. The team on the other side in the town, maybe they would have come back, maybe they would have gone all the way around and come from behind, and we would have definitely won that game. But instead, I stayed in one spot. Most people, if it works and you're dealing damage, why would you move? Well, it's for the future of the game. Are you going to be able to do consistent damage when the game is over? No, you can't. So make sure that the game actually lasts, even if you do less damage in that one entire moment. And of course, I got way too greedy in that game and just focused on trying to do as much damage as possible. Please, if you're thinking about this, try not to do what I did, and think about where you could potentially help out your team. And of course, if I went over there, we probably could have saved a couple of my teammates that were over there, opening up the chances of us being able to then reset the cap more, because there's multiple of us. One of us might have YOLO'd into the cap circle to get a reset off, and of course, because I didn't do that, because I was getting greedy, I'm gonna blame my team. Oh, it's my team's fault. No one went into the cap circle. They were closer. They should have done it. Well, if I'd have done it, it would have probably actually worked, and we'd have actually been able to do something. So yeah, it's one of those things that you've got to be super critical of yourself, and I probably lost that game for our team on my own, single-handedly in that game. So could the team have helped? Yeah, they could have gone and saved it, but I could have as well. So by the fact that I didn't actually go and do that, I lost us the game. That is what it is. Someone else on the team might have also lost us the game, but because I could have saved the game, it's my fault. Could it have been different? Could we have done different things? Could we have not taken the hit by the waffle at the beginning of the game? The RNG, would it have saved us in the end because we didn't even get taken out in the first place? No. Yeah, it's one of those things that you don't really want to be attributing your downfalls, your games, your defeats to RNG, that sort of stuff. Most of the time you can avoid even being able to be affected by RNG within the game. And of course, that's by doing things like aiming for center of mass on certain areas. You can make sure that you track people to make them less likely to be moving. You can often track and pen people, which is going to be able to allow your teammates to hit them if you bounce. And most likely your teammates will reset the tracks on a vehicle, which allows you to get another shot into them where maybe you wouldn't have. And it's all of these things combined where you can limit how RNG affects you. It will affect you. It affects me. I miss shots all of the time because you fully aim on the part of armor that you want to hit, and it goes out towards one of the sides of the circle that you just don't leave. But it's not, that happens to everyone, whether it's the opposing player that you're playing against. Maybe they get a lucky shot, maybe they don't, maybe you get a lucky shot and then you get a bad one. It's all one of those things, it swings around about, so it will go for you as well as go for your enemy team. So if you kind of think about all of these things, the whole point of this video was to talk about the kind of mentality that you need to take and approach the game with if you actually want to get better and stop having games where you're just losing. And yeah, hopefully this video comes away in the right way. I'm not trying to do it to say people play badly, etc. I'm trying to do it so that people can attribute the right things to the right scenario to actually win more games and do better. And these are all of the things that you'll find other top players doing. And I thought about it for a while, and I wanted to make sure that I kind of put out the content that is useful to you guys and is actually going to be useful. Because often tank reviews, they can get into a lull where you're just producing them, you're telling people that these tanks are good, maybe they're having terrible results in them, but they don't know why. And so hopefully this video is going to give you a little indication, and in the future we're going to do more videos on specific topics within the game so that you know what I'm talking about when we're doing the reviews, and of course making sure that everyone understands the core key concepts of the game, including the game mechanics, because a lot of the time people blame and go down to RNG on core game mechanics that maybe they just don't understand. Trust me, I didn't understand them as well, and Wargaming don't make it easy for you to actually understand like 90% of the mechanics in this game. So it is nobody's fault, and hopefully we'll at least shed a light on a lot of these mechanics and how you can alter them, and how you can avoid RNG, how you can make sure that your games are more consistent, and how you can make sure that you're not just getting shafted every single game by the enemy team. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Bit of a long one, bit of a weird format, but it's kind of raw, it's fresh, and it's just my thoughts on a couple of things, and hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, like the video, and of course subscribe and share it to some other people who might play the game. Maybe they're in your clan, whatever it is. Hopefully it will give them an indication, maybe they can critique it. And I am not the best player in the game. If there's someone, if you're watching and you're better than me statistically, or maybe you perform way better, let me know in the comment section down below what else you would do when you get to the higher percentage win rates, because when it comes to that, it becomes positioning and where you should be, as opposed to your core gameplay by aiming, by moving, by using armor, that sort of stuff. That stuff will only get you so far, but it's actually the next step where you're thinking about the game kind of theoretically, where you should be moving and that sort of stuff, that will change your game to the next level. From about 54% win rate, I think, is kind of the sweet spot where you understand the core game mechanics, how to actually do the game, how to play the game, but how do you use those mechanics to actually have results and impact games. That is between 54 and like 60% in the game. So that's kind of how you can evaluate where you're at on the spectrum. If you're still mastering the games and mechanics and how to actually use them, that's probably you're in between, anywhere from, I don't know, 0% win rate to 54%. And then if you're above that, in my opinion, in my experience, that's where you kind of start to master and develop your skills of actually moving around, positioning, and where you should be to use those mechanics to your advantage and win more games and help out your team. So with that all being said, I hope you did enjoy this video once again, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great rest of the day. Goodbye.